right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's A Course in Miracle Workbook lesson. And we are in the triple numbers now. This is Workbook Lesson 100. And I am so glad that I have persevered and I am still here. And I am so happy that you are here also with me. What an accomplishment for us to stay the course for 100 consecutive days and be committed to our original purpose, and that is the training of our minds or the renewing of our minds. I even said that we're in a we're in a process of rejuvenating our minds, and I think the other description we use is what we call transformation. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by, how do you be transformed? By the renewing of the mind. And so we have been at this for 100 days. How exciting is that? That tells me that there is something in this process that is taking place that is beyond what we can ask or think. And I'm just delighted that, and I'm happy that you're here with me this morning again. And so we are going to, once again, with the help of your temporary guide, again, my name is Oliver Blue, and I am your temporary guide on the side. On the side means that what? I am no different than you. We have complete equality. I'm just happen to be sitting in this seat and you happen to be sitting in yours. But it doesn't mean that we are different. It means that what? We are on this journey together, side by side. And as I said before, these lessons are sponsored by Truly Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated and devoted to the sharing of advanced spiritual teachings. Why do we say advanced? Well, something that is advanced means that it's moving, or it is what? It is not standing still. And so in true spirituality, we are always what? Expanding. We are always growing. We're always in a growth pattern. And so true spiritual experiences should at its core include an ever upward expansion in awareness and consciousness of life itself, of who we are, or who responsible for all of this, which we call our source, which we call our creator. So there should always be an expansion in our what? Deepest love and understanding of who we are and what life is all about. And so today we're going to look into another essential part of this transformation process, and we're going to be staying on the vein of the last 3 or 4 sessions that we've introduced the idea of salvation, and salvation from God's point of view. We started in lesson 98 when we say, I will accept my part in God's plan for salvation. And then we moved on and said salvation is our only function here. That's the only purpose for us being here. And so we have defined salvation from a course perspective, which states that salvation is a promise from God. It's a promise from God, or a guarantee from God. And that promise is that God promises that what? That everyone will eventually find their way back to Him. It will happen eventually. Why? Because what? We remain as God created us. And so if we remain as God created us, then that also means that this whole idea of separation is a forest. And as though we have believed that we have separated ourselves from our creator, The guarantee that God made is that that all of us, all humanity, will eventually wake up to the reality of their true self, of their oneness with their Creator. That ideas leave not their source. That it's impossible for us to be separated from the source of our being. Why? Because there is only one being. And that being we call God. Or we say God is, and there is nothing else. And so if God is, and there is nothing else, then if we exist, and we know that we do, why? Because we are aware and we're conscious, then we must be a part of that one being. So it's a shared being. It's not as though, it's not the message that the world communicates that there is, that Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and broken into billions and billions and billions of beings, separate beings with separate minds and separate bodies. That is that's part of the illusion. That's part of the dream. That's part of the vain imagining. That's part of the fantasy. That's part of that which is unreal, which is designed to tempt us to take us away from our true self. But in reality, Humpty Dumpty has not fallen off the wall. God has not separated from its creation. Why? Because what God created is himself. And for God to separate from himself is for God to split off from himself and be divided. And we all know, like our elder brother Jesus said, a house divided cannot stand, and you can apply that in this case, what we're talking about. If God divided against himself, he could not stand. It would make duality real. It would make having an opposite real. It would make having enemies real. It would make sacrifices real. It would make all of these concepts and ideas that we made up to appear to be real, when indeed they're not. And so salvation, again, is merely simply the fact that all of us will eventually transition our thinking or transition our sleeping to awakening. It will happen. Even if we have to live 1,000 lifetimes, it will happen. Because remember, there's only one of us appearing to have these multiple dreams of individuation, of individuality, of personhood, when in fact it's just one dream. So when one of us wake up, all humanity wakes up. When you become aware, when you become born again, when you become awakened, when you become enlightened to the reality that there's only the one, and there's only oneness. And if there's only one and there's only oneness, then all that appear to be separate from the one, it all wakes up too. It's all brought into the oneness. So all humanity wakes up when you do, or when I do. And then we take on a role. We take on a role in the awakening of those that remain asleep. And that's what we're going to talk about today, that my part is essential, is that our part. Remember on yesterday we said our only function here is salvation. Our only function, our only purpose for being here is to put the dream to rest. We came here to put the dream to rest, the dream of separation. It's God's It's God's substance and God's evidence that there's only the one. Your birth is substance and evidence of the things hoped for, and it's the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. That there's only the one. That God's Son is innocent. That there is no guilt. There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. That there's just this one happiness, this oneness, where happiness and joy and peace and bliss and infinite intelligence and all creation and creativity, where it all abides. You're the substance and the evidence of that. I am the substance and the evidence of that. That is our only purpose for being here. But when we're not aware of that purpose, we seek to be something else. When we don't understand our purpose as the right or right, when you don't know the purpose of the things, you will abuse it, or you will seek to be something else. So when we don't understand our purpose in life, why we're here, then we'll find another purpose. And I wrote something this morning I want to share with you. What did I write this morning about that? I think it was on that title. And so this morning I shared that, have you noticed how exhausting it is to be something that you are not? Have you noticed how exhausting it is to be something that you are not? All the effort we have put into being these individual selves, separated and apart from everyone else, even from nature, and even separated from our Creator. How exhausting this can be. It's very exhausting. Life, that's why life can be so taxing, so burdensome, so depressing at times, because we're trying to be something that we're not. It is exhausting, because to be ourselves, it doesn't take any effort. To be our unchanging, eternal selves, it takes no effort. It's like breathing. You don't really think about it. But it takes a tremendous amount of thought, a tremendous amount of thought, a tremendous amount of planning, a tremendous amount of effort into making ourselves into something that we're not. And it's exhausting. Very exhausting. And so once we understand that our only function, our only purpose of being here in the dream is salvation. To be proof, to be substance and evidence that what God promised, what God said is true. That we are who we are. And no other human being demonstrated that in such a dramatic way as our elder brother did 2020 something years ago. When he said, when you see me, you have seen the Creator. Why? Because the Creator and I are the same. We're one. So Jesus was the substance and the evidence of this oneness. And now it's our turn. Who do you say that you are? Who do you say that you are? Or who are you trying to be? Or what are you trying to be? So, again, today's lesson is our part is essential, meaning that if something that is essential, it means that it is absolutely necessary. Once we wake up from the dream of separation, it is so necessary and it is so important, extremely important, that we understand what God's plan for salvation. God's plan to bring everyone into the awareness of the truth, everyone into the knowledge of the truth, everyone into the knowing of themselves, everyone to have the one universal experience of knowing thyself. And transitioning from a dream of separation, from a belief in the dream, from a belief in separation, to an absolute knowing of their true self, of the oneness that they are, of the oneness that we share with God. That all things have been reconciled back into the Father, back into the Creator. All things, everyone. There's nothing outside of God. There's God and nothing else. Reconciliation means that gathering together every fragment, every seeming fragment, because in reality, nothing's been separated. But in the dream, it has. So we come down to the level of the dream. So I'm talking to you from the level of the dream. That we're either what? Sleep or awake in a dream. So when we wake up in the dream, then we're left there. Why? Because there's a purpose for which we came. And so we have this important role in God's plan. You are important. You are absolutely important. That you have the highest calling that there is in all of heaven. You have the highest calling on your life. Everyone, no one excluded. Everyone. That's why he said, many have called. Jesus said, many had called. Many have been called. When he said the many, he was talking about all. All has been called, but few have what? Chosen. Few have waken up. Wow. But so when we wake up, then we have an assignment. We become ambassadors. We become messengers of God. We become teachers of God. We become the light of the world. We become what? Happiness, joy, peace. These become our function. And so never think again. Once you hear this, you'll never think again of yourself as what? Not being important, not being essential, not having significance. Your self-concept now rises to the level of God, that you have equality with God. Why? Because you and God have one will. One will. That's why Jesus said that it be on earth as it is in heaven. Why? Because that's the will of the Father. That is the will of God. And so the idea for today is our part, or your part, my part, is essential. It is very essential. We need to really get this. Our purpose for being here as the light of the world is essential, absolutely necessary, and extremely important to God's plan. Notice now, God's plan for salvation. There's many plans out here. In Proverbs, it says, many are the plans in a man's heart. But it's what? It is God's purposes that shall prevail. So mankind in its sleeping state, it has what? Plans for salvation. It has plans of its own that do not work, that never have worked. And so just as all of humanity, just as all of humanity competes or completes our Father or our Creator, we complete. Why? Because without us, reality is incomplete. There's no reality without you and me. There's no kingdom without you and me. There's no God without you and I. Why? We share the same being. The being is not split. There's only one consciousness. There's only one awareness, and we share that with God and with each other. It says, so we complete reality, or we complete God. So our part in it completes our Father's plan. So that we don't only complete God, but we complete the plans of God. And God doesn't have any backup plans. God's plan is his will. So in other words, we complete the will of God. We are the evidence. We are the substance. See how important we are. We are no different. We are not a separate entity than our Creator. We are our Creator. Wow, I know that's a lofty idea, but it's the truth. We learn to sit with it and relax with it. The more we stay in this renewal part, the only resistance that comes up when we say these things like this, when the Course says things like this, the only resistance is that separated self, that ego self, that wants what? That wants to remain in a state of separation. That's the only one that gets offended. That's the only one that is questioning the reality. Because the reality of this oneness, really, what it really says is there is no ego. There is no separated self. And that's why the ego feelings get hurt. That's why our personhood gets hurt. You mean to tell me there's only one being? That I'm not a separate self with a separate personality? Only in dreams you are. In reality, no, it's only the one. So salvation must reverse the mad belief in separation. You see that? Salvation has come to what? It has come to reverse the mad belief in separate thoughts, separate bodies, which lead separate lives and go their separate ways, which is what the world puts on display. That everybody is what? On doing their own thing. Everybody in their separate life with their separate thoughts, their separate ideas. It appears that way, that we're these private individuals. But in reality, that is not what is true. That's not what's real. It said, and salvation purpose is to reverse that. It's a mad belief. There is no separate thoughts. There are no private thoughts. There is no separate bodies. In the sense that they're not real. Why? They have a beginning and have an end. So that means they're not real. It's just an experience. A seeming experience. A temporary experience. That's what makes it unreal, because it's only temporary. Anything that's temporary means it's not real. Only that which is what? Permanent. Only that which is eternal qualifies to be what? Under the guise of reality. So just think about it. Everything on this planet is temporary. Because in reality, what? Nothing changes. Everything remains as it was created. And God is the only one that creates. Love is the only one that creates. And God would not create what? A planet, a world, or separate selves that are born and that dies. Because that would what? That is goes against the law of God. That all things are created after its own kind. It's after its own likeness, after its own image. So whatever God has created, well, it's like unto himself. So therefore, that which is formless and timeless is what God created. God never created bodies or manifested physicality. God is awareness. God is consciousness. God is the sum total of his thoughts. So salvation must reverse the mad belief in separate thoughts, separate bodies, which lead separate lives and go their separate ways. That's the way we see the world. It says one function, though, shared by separate minds, unite them in one purpose. The one function. It says one function. And what is that function? Salvation. Salvation is our only function. And that's the promise of God, that what? All is one and one is all. All will wake up to the reality. And when it appears that separate minds unite in this one purpose, it says what? For each one of them in equality essential to them all. It unites us in purpose. So we all have a united purpose. We all have one purpose. We don't have different purposes. We have the one purpose. And that's the one that God gave us. We only have one function, and that's the one that God gave us. So God wills for us is perfect happiness. That's the will of God for what he created. Why? Because he knows that happiness is a part of what he created. God's will is for our perfect happiness. Notice it didn't say happiness, it said perfect happiness, mature happiness, complete happiness. So when we're not experiencing complete happiness, that just means that what we are working on a different will. We have a different will in mind. We're making up something different than the will of God. It says, why should we choose to go against God's will? If God's will for us is perfect happiness, why would we choose to go against it? Think about that. Who doesn't want to be happy? It says the part that he has saved for us to take in working out his plan is given to us that we might be restored to what his will is. So God does not only wake us up, but he also what? He causes us to what? Be a part of the waking up of the entire universe, including all humanity. Wow. What a responsibility. And this is the essential part that this lesson is talking about. We are an essential part of God's plan. God's plan cannot be complete without us. Why? Because God's not separate from us. And God knows what he placed within us. And God is what? Only waiting to see. God is only interested in seeing what he placed within our nature. He's not interested in dreams and illusions and what? Fantasies and wild imaginings in illusions. God is only interested in what he is. Awareness and consciousness is only interested in what it is. All the other dance and play that seems to happen, it doesn't change the reality or the nature of the one creator, nor his creation. It says so. This part is as essential to his plan as to our happiness. So here, the idea is that our happiness is so integrated within what? Our function. That our function and our happiness are all the same. It says our joy must be complete to let God's plan be understood by those to whom God sent to us. So once we wake up to the reality of who we are, we participate in what? The function of waking up all other humanity, the remain of humanity. And it is in being, not doing that, but it is in being who we are that happens. And in being who we are, we experience the happiness and the joy and the peace that we are. It doesn't come outside of God's plan, but it's within God's plan. So we can have temporary experiences of joy, happiness, and peace, but it's only temporary. But that which remains, that which is a part of our nature, to experience that is to be who we are. Remember what we said. It's exhausting trying to be something else, to go find happiness, joy, and peace, like the prodigal son. Out there in the world, it's not out there. That's exhausting. But what is most natural is being ourselves. Being our happy, joyful, peaceful, unchanging self. It takes no effort at all. It takes no effort at all to be happy. No effort at all to be joyful, to be peaceful. But it takes a tremendous amount of effort to be sad and unhappy and to be fearful and angry and resentful. Takes a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of thought, goes into that. And so it's exhausting. And so what God is saying is that what life is simple. Life is very simple. And we have complicated it. Why? By creating a self of our own, creating a plan of our own. And then what? Attempting to execute a plan that can never what? That can never succeed. You can never not be yourself. We can never not be ourselves. We can't change that. You can't change the love that you are. You can't change the happiness that you are, the peace that you are, the joy that you are, the eternal nature that you are. You can't change that. You can only what? Fall into a trance or a dream or fantasy or an illusion or an imagining yourself suffering, imagining yourself being in lack, imagining yourself being born and dying, and in between all of the effort that has to go into what? Maintaining this separated self with this personality and all of the things that we face. Living out of harmony with who we are. That's depressing, that's suffering, and it's exhausting. But we are learning today that we are our part. Being ourselves is our part. Being our true self is essential to God's plan for salvation. Therein lies our perfect happiness. Therein lies our perfect happiness. And we're not talking about being religious. That's the difference. We're not talking about being religious. We're talking about what? Being ourselves. Being our God self. And so, it says, our joy must be complete. It says, they that God sends to us, those that we encounter, they see our function, they see their function in our shining face. And hear God's calling to them in our what? In our happy laugh. So when we wake up, when you really wake up to the truth, when you really wake up to the truth and come face to face with your true identity, when you come face to face with your Creator, then your face becomes your Creator. Your joy becomes your Creator's joy. Your laughter becomes your Creator's laughter. Your peace becomes your Creator peace. Your radiant aliveness becomes your Creator's radiant aliveness, because you all share the same being. And so when we go out into the world with this awareness, with this consciousness, with this awakened consciousness, we know that our face is the face of Christ. We know that our laughter is the laughter of Christ. Christ being one self that we all are. And we represent that. We become the substance and the evidence of all those that we meet. We're the substance of things that they hope for. We're the evidence of the thing that's not seen unto them in that moment. We become what? We become the light of the world. We become the light of the world to everyone. And in that, we understand that our part in the process of salvation, of waking up all humanity, is essential. It's essential. It's essential to God's plan. We understand how important we are. While life has deep meaning and good purpose, that we no longer have a self-concept of ourselves, that we no longer have to try to make ourselves. It don't get any better than this. Doesn't get any higher than this. Who you are, like Jesus said, you can't add nothing to your statue. You can't add nothing to your importance. You can't add anything to your necessity. Because you are just as important and just as necessary as God, your creator. He says, so you can't add anything to your statue. Not a jot and not a tittle. So we don't have to go out and try to make something. We don't have to go out and try to be something that we're not, which is very exhausting, like we said. We just be ourselves. Be our loving self. Be our peaceful self. Be our joyful self. Be our creative self. Be our alive, radiant, alive self. Be our happy self. It says, we are indeed essential to God's plan. That is the idea. That's the thought that we're going to hold today, all day long. I am essential to God's plan in salvation. You can only say that as you know yourself. It says, without our joy, his joy is incomplete. Why? Because his joy and our joy are the same. He says, without our smile, the world cannot be saved. Why? Because the world, our smile and God's smile are the same. It says, while we are sad. So when we go out into the world in sadness and not with a joyful heart, not with a radiant smile. He said, when we go out in the world acting sad, it said the light that God himself appointed as the means to save the world is dim and lusterless, and no one laughs, because all laughter can but echo yours. So there is no laughter if you're not laughing. There is no smile if you're not smiling. There is no joy if you're not joyful. There is no peace if you're not resting in peace. There's no light if your light's not shining. There's no reality if you're out to make something that is unreal. So it's important. It's essential. It is essential. Our part is essential. Our life matters. Your life matters. It's an essential part of God's plan. You are not chopped liver. You are not Jonathan's and Ruth's daughter or son. You are the very presence, the innocence, the holiness, the wholeness, the completeness of God Almighty. That's who you are. Equal in your position. Equal. Innocent, whole and complete. You are the holy home of God. If you've never been told. That's who and what you are. And why you are is to be the light of the world. The why has to do with the purpose. And your purpose has an essential part in the saving and the rescuing of humanity. Rescuing humanity from nothingness. Because how we believe that we accomplish separation is a falsity. It's an illusion. It's impossible. So like we said on yesterday, that we what? That we forgive the nothingness. Like we said on yesterday, we forgive the nothingness. Because we said that forgiveness and salvation are the same. So we wake up from nothingness and forgive nothingness. And so the conclusion is what? God is love. And anything that's what not a loving is not of God, and it doesn't exist. It says we are indeed essential to God's plan. Just as our light increases every light that shines in heaven. Oh my God. Our light increases every light that shines in heaven. Heaven is not some separate place. Heaven is who we are. So as your light shines, heaven's light shines brighter. It increases. Heaven is not a separate place. Heaven is a reality that is a part of your nature. Your smile, your joy, your peace. All of these are part and parcels of the Godhead that you are. I said it. Yeah, I said it. So just as your light increases every light that shines in heaven, so your joy on earth calls to all minds to let their sorrows go and take their place beside you in God's plan. And so as we function as the light of the world, as we function as what? Salvation, as we function as forgiveness, as we be ourselves, which is the most natural thing to do. We are opening up the minds of those that remain asleep in dreams of separation. That's what we're doing. We are bringing awareness and a consciousness to our prodigal brothers and sisters that still see themselves as separate from us and from their Creator. We're opening up a portal, a gate, a bridge to allow all humanity to cross the bridge, to go through the portal, to say yes to their true self. And to let their it says to let their sorrows go. What is sorrow? Sorrow is trying to be something that we're not. Sorrow is following the ego thought system of separation. That is sorrow. It leads to sorrow. It don't care how much you acquire, how much money you acquire, how much material stuff you acquire, no matter how many friends you gather, doesn't matter what it appears on the surface. Without a knowing of yourself, none of those things will make you happy. All of those things will lead to what? Sorrow. He says, God's messengers are joyous, and their joy heals sorrow and despair. They are the proof. They are the substance. They are the evidence that God wills perfect happiness for all who will accept their Father's gifts as theirs. So the life that we share is a gift. It's an absolute gift. Doesn't require any payment, any sacrifice. It's an absolute gift. So we are the gifts of God. God calls himself the gift. And so we have accepted this gift of reality. We become It says, we become the messengers of God, joyous and proof that God wills perfect happiness for everyone. We will not let ourselves be sad today. Now that we know this, now that you know this and I know this. In other words, what he's saying, let me make it plain. The world does not know. The world doesn't have an idea. The world can't see. Can't see the reality if you don't be yourself. Someone inspired you. Someone opened a door or a portal or laid a bridge for you to come to know yourself. Someone. You saw something in someone. You saw a light. And because of that, what you came to a point where you made a decision and you opened yourself up to the reality and you embraced it. And now you're happy. And now you're joyful and now you're peaceful. And now God said, well, you are very important and very necessary. You are part of this grand plan of awakening. So I need you to be who you are. You remain as I created you. So be the light of the world. Just be yourself. It takes no effort. It takes much, much effort to not be who you really are. It takes much effort to be hateful and to separate and to be judgeful and to hold grievances and be resentful. He said it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to communicate separation, but it takes no effort to be oneness. He said, I need you now. I need you, your life, the rest of your days. That's your purpose. You are an essential part of this grand plan of awakening that is underway. So don't fall back asleep. So he says, so today what? We will not allow ourselves to be sad. For if we do, we fail to take the part that is essential to God's plan, as well as to our own vision. Sadness is the sign that you would play another part, being something that you're not. When we're sad, we're actually accepting another part, another role, another purpose, other than the part and the purpose and the role that God gave us, instead of what has been assigned to us by God. So anytime we're tempted to be sad, that temptation is coming for the sole purpose of getting you to consider being something that you're not. That's what the temptation is. The temptation is believing that what you've been changed, or you're separate, or you're not who God said you are. That's the temptation. We talked about this on yesterday. Temptation is always designed to get you to endorse something that you're not, and walk away from the thing that you are. It's called going prodigal. He says, but sadness is a sign that you would play another part instead of what has been assigned to you by God. Thus you do fail. It says, thus do you fail to show the world how great happiness he wills for you, and so you do not recognize that it is yours. So to be sad is to recognize that happiness is not yours. To be sad is an indication that we have walked away from our purpose. To be sad, regardless of what the situation or the circumstance or the condition. To be sad, sadness. Doesn't mean that you're not going to be what? You're not going to have feelings or sensations of depression. Doesn't mean that you're not going to be tempted. But sadness is when we what? We perpetuate the false idea that situations, circumstances, and conditions are real. They're not real. So why would we be sad over what? Something that is not real. Why would you leave the movie sad because of what happened in the movie? It makes no sense. You know it's not real. So in our what? In our exchange and activity with others and relationships, when we get sad, like people get sad, when something happens or they don't get what they want, or they lose something, or something comes into their life that they don't want, they get sad. Well, that is an indication that what we have lost in that moment an awareness of who we are. We've lost consciousness with our true self. We're trying to be something that we're not. So we're saying yes to suffering. We're saying yes to suffering, and it's so unnecessary. It doesn't matter what happens, what comes or goes, what's born or dies. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change reality. It doesn't change who you are. And so we don't have to abandon our nature. We can remain joyous, happy, peaceful, at one. We can keep these radiant smiles, always there to address and greet others. Why? Because we're the substance of things hoped for. We're the evidence of that which is not seen. By our what? Presence, our pure presence in that moment, demonstrating the light that we are. We give others hope. We give those that are still out of the way, we give them hope. But if those of us that know that we are the light, put a bushel over our light, how will the world see? So God asks us to be happy so the world can see how much He loves His creation, and wills no sorrow rises to abate our joy, nor fear to beset us to disturb our peace. We are God's messengers today. We're the light of the world. We're ambassadors for Christ. We bring His happiness, which is our happiness, and sees His messenger, see ourselves in our happy face. So today in our practice, we will prepare ourselves for this today in our 5-minute practice periods. So for each hour, we want to remind ourselves for the first 5 minutes. We're going to remind ourselves by feeling happiness arise in us according to our Father's will and according to ours and according to our nature. It arises within us, not outside of us. Happiness comes from within. Joy comes from within. Peace comes from within, because that's just who we are. It says we'll begin to exercise with the thought of today's idea. Then realize that our part is to be happy. Our part, which is essential in God's plan of salvation, is to be happy. Our important, essential, absolutely necessary part in every hour of the day is to be happy. It says, only this is asked of us, or anyone who wants to take their place among God's messengers, or among the saviors of the world. This is what a savior does. A savior don't sit around moping and in sadness. But a savior is always always demonstrating the joy and the happiness that they are, the peace that they are. It says, think what this means. we have indeed been wrong in our belief that sacrifice is asked. God's not asking us to sacrifice. He's not asking us to suck it up. No, He's asking us to be ourselves. So there's no sacrifice. God requires no sacrifices. Excuse me. Sacrifice is a man-made idea. Sacrifice is part of the belief in separation. Though we have been strongly taught that sacrifice is a good thing. Well, here it says that it's not. When we're being loving, that's not a sacrifice. When we're being happy, that's not a sacrifice. Why? But that's who we are. There's no need for sacrifice. We just be. So when we give, it's not a sacrifice. We give because we're giving beings. It's not a sacrifice. It's who we are. It says, we have indeed been wrong in our belief that sacrifice is asked. We but receive according to God's plan and never lose or never sacrifice or never die. When we are walking in our true identity of who we are as a shared being of God, we never lose, we never sacrifice, and we never die. Why? Because that's not even in the nature. These things are not a part of heaven. These things are not a part of God. These are man-made ideas. Now let us try to find the joy that proves to us and all the world that God's will, what God's will is for us. It is our function that we find it here and that we find it now. For this we came. For this purpose we came. And we have found it. We have found our purpose. We have found our part. We have found our part, and it is essential, and it is very necessary. It says, let this one be the day that we succeed. We're going to succeed today, not only in knowing, but in being. It says, look deep within ourselves, undismayed by all the little thoughts and foolish goals that pass as we ascend to meet the Christ that we are. It's called meeting ourselves, knowing ourselves, awakening to ourselves, being enlightened to ourselves. It says Christ will be there, or our true self will be there, or God will be there, because they're all one. So this is all, again, speaking from a place that we think we are separate, because in reality there is no separation. We can only know ourselves because we are only ourselves. When we wake up from the dream, we realize that Christ and ourself and God and everything that seemingly was separate is all one. That's only the oneness. And so and you can reach, it says, and you can reach him now. What could you rather look upon in place of him who waits that you may look on him? What little thought has power to hold you back? What foolish goal can keep you from success when he who calls to you is God himself? So God is calling on himself to recognize himself. When you wake up, it is you recognizing that you are God. And you let go of all the other roles, all the other parts, all the other purposes. You have found the one thing. You have found the one thing. And you have found everything in the one thing. So not only is he there, but you there. Everything is there. What we're talking about here is when you embrace oneness, and everything is one. And all, like Paul said, everything's been reconciled back into the one. And you are the one. I am the one. It says that we are essential to this plan right here that we're talking about. We're essential. We are the messengers to the world today. We are the light of the world. It says we must find what the Creator would have us to give. Do not forget the idea for today between the hourly practice periods. It is ourself who calls to us today. Earlier I said it was God called. Now it says ourself called. Why? Because ourself and God is not separate. We're one. It's one calling. It's one self, one calling, one light, one love, the one love, the one life, the one joy, the one happiness, the one peace, the one purpose. And it is this oneness that we answer. Every time we tell ourselves that we are essential to the one plan for salvation of the world. Oh my God. How beautiful is God's ways. How excellent is thy ways in all the earth. Now you understand what the Bible means when it says that. Oh God, our God, how excellent is thy ways in all the earth. How excellent is thy name. How excellent is thy plan. How excellent is thy purpose. How excellent is thy creation. How excellent is everything. Everything is what? Excellent. And so on this day, we excel to the reality of the one name, of the one self, of the one being that we all share. So we're part of that excellence. So today I greet you, your excellency. And today we greet our neighbor. We say, your excellency. And we bring with us the happiness, the joy, the peace, the radiant smile, the grand laughter in everything we do, in every place we go. And we share this smile, this grandeur, this happiness with everyone we meet today along the journey, beckoning our brothers and sisters to join us as we head metaphorically, as we return home to the place we never left. And that's our idea for today. That's our role. That's our part today. And it is very, very important. You are important. Your life has deep meaning and good purpose. So as you go out into your day, no sadness, no depression. Those are all temptations. They're just temptations to be what you're not. And it takes a tremendous amount of effort. And it can be exhausting, like we said at the beginning. Gotta find our way, and we have found the way. And we are the way, the truth, and the life. And so that's the end of our lesson today. And I am going to sign off here with this song that says, got to find our way back to you, Lord. Why? Because it's essential. Because you hold the plan. And your plan is essential. It's an essential plan. And so until tomorrow, when we'll look at lesson 101. All right. You guys have a great day. And I thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Trying to find a way to escape. Trying to find a way to escape all the pressure I feel growing in inside of me, because I'm far away from you, knowing that you are my source. So I gotta find my way back to you, Lord. I've gotta find my way back to you, Lord. I've gotta find my way back to you, Lord. Gotta find my way back to you, Lord. I've gotta find my way back to you, Lord. I've gotta find my way. Darkly, I see no light in front of me. I come to the conclusion that you are the eyes that see past all confusion to a place called sanity. You take my hand, I'm free.